Hey everybody! So, for the first video in this series, I talked about the best villain in the Disney animated canon. Maleficent, obviously. And that kind of stalled me for a little bit because, to paraphrase William Goldman in The Princess Bride, after the best, what else is there? This video is not about the next best villain, although I would rank this character up there. Top 10, definitely. Top 5, maybe. But it is about a villainous character and one who is particularly interesting because the thing is, this character does everything right. Of course, they did everything right. How could they be a villain? Quite a conundrum. So, I'm going to try to remember to avoid putting any spoilers in the description because what I'd love is if you would pause it here and leave me a comment with your guess about which villain I'm going to be discussing. Now, you're on your honor not to post your guess after watching the entire video and be like, ha ha ha, I'm right. But as my viewers, I trust you. Welcome back. Well, I guess if you're listening to this, you're back, so good for us. What I want to explore is the idea of right, what that means, as well as the angle of according to whom. In many stories, the villain is an outsider. This holds true in Disney's work as well. Maleficent is flat out told she's not wanted, and characters like Ursula, Scar, Dr. Facilier, and Ercole Visconti are, if not outright rejected, at least on the fringes of their society, pouncing upon what crumbs they can scrabble, and hungry for more. However, this is not the case for Gaston. While he is not shown to be wealthy, neither does he seem particularly concerned about his financial situation. Additionally, he is greatly respected by everyone around him, with the exception of Belle herself. Significantly, her repeated attempts to dodge his romantic advances are met with surprise and confusion by others. "What's wrong with her?" asks one girl. "She's crazy," says another. "He's gorgeous." And the setting matters. In this poor provincial town, Belle has very limited prospects. As in, marriage is pretty much it. In the opening song, Belle, the only women we see working are either stated or implied to be supporting their husbands. It's possible that Maurice and Belle own their farm and maybe have some investment income. Otherwise, I'm not sure how Maurice gets the parts he needs for his inventions or to repair his tools and his equipment. So, either Belle gets married and becomes a wife and mother, or she stays on the farm and scrapes by with what she can manage from that. From the perspective of financial stability, as well as social standing and long-term security, Gaston's offer is disproportionately generous. Even LeFou initially objects when Gaston points out Belle and says, "I've set my sights on that one." Gaston isn't bothered by the fact that she's eccentric, poorly connected, cheap, and the next thing the town has to a social outcast, surpassed only by her father. To him, she's the most beautiful girl in the village, and that makes her the best. So Gaston's expectation that Belle will accept his proposal is perfectly reasonable. And then she doesn't. And he kind of doesn't take it very well. But let's consider this from a broader perspective. Gaston has put his efforts into achieving and becoming the pinnacle of everything that their society expects of a man. And yet, Belle still rejects him. It's a very personal insult, a blow to his pride, to his sense of identity, and arguably to his entire worldview. He has made himself into everything a woman should want. But he's still not good enough for her. How is that even possible? His astonished fury mirrors that of another seemingly peerless suitor, one whose proposal is recognizably terrible to an outsider and is clearly and definitively rejected by his would-be fiancé. I am speaking, of course, of Mr. Fitzwilliam Darcy, from Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice. The proposals themselves aren't completely parallel. Gaston isn't the one who insults his intended's family. On the other hand, he doesn't seem to be as rich as Mr. Darcy, so there's that, I guess. But in both cases, the men have effectively learned the lessons their society has taught them. And in neither case do those lessons include considering that other people might have ideas that are different from yours, or sometimes you might not get what you want, and how to behave appropriately when that happens. In the Disney movie, the Beast is presented at least somewhat sympathetically in the prologue as a young prince who had everything his heart desired, but was spoiled, selfish, and unkind. There is, if not the direct statement, at least the implication that having things always go the way you want them to is not actually healthy. It turns you into a monster. In the Beast's case, the transformation is physical in addition to psychological because of the curse placed upon him. However, Gaston and Mr. Darcy remain externally unchanged, and most people do not see past their external advantages. In Pride and Prejudice, though, the reader is eventually shown that Mr. Darcy is at least not intentionally unkind, nor is he completely selfish. He has taken on at least the legal and financial responsibilities of raising his younger sister since the death of their parents. Additionally, although his friend Mr. Bingley is his equal in neither wealth nor social standing, Mr. Darcy treats him as a peer, not as an inferior. It is through these relationships that Mr. Darcy's redemption begins. Likewise, it is through the ongoing influence of Belle's presence that redemption begins for the Beast. In contrast, though, Gaston has no relationships of that nature. No one who is willing to push back against him, to offer perspectives that even differ from his, let alone to tell him that he's wrong or that he should change. I want to be clear that I do not consider Gaston to be some kind of innocent victim here, a dewy, impressionable poppet led astray by the schemes of those wiser in the ways of the world than he. Eesh. Watch out, Dickens. I'm on my way. And it is not Mr. Bingley's responsibility to make his friend a better person any more than it is Belle's responsibility to change the Beast. But it does illustrate the significance of our environment and specifically the influence of the people around us on who we are, how we see ourselves, and what sort of person we want to become. When the people around us regularly reinforce a framework about what type of person we are and how our actions affect the world around us, it becomes more and more difficult to reject or even question that. It's especially true the more consistent it is, especially when it's echoed by a large group of people, like with Mr. Darcy and Gaston. And when they're all saying really nice things about you, it's even more tempting to just kind of go along with it. Gaston is an incredibly realistic, modern villain in that his arrogance, his entitlement, and the way he takes pride in his lack of empathy or concern for others is clearly connected to the toxic culture that surrounds him. This is why feminists say patriarchy hurts men too, and take a stand against toxic masculinity. It normalizes and even glamorizes behavior like Gaston's, although his is a fairly extreme case. The movie doesn't villainize the townspeople, despite the fact that any exploration of Gaston's character has to consider the impact of their influence on his development. And while I think we're not intended to examine it that closely, I also think that we ought to. We need to explore the extent to which our actions affect and influence others, and the ways in which we are affected and influenced by others as well. And we need to realize that it's rarely direct influence. It's based on what's expected and normalized. The hackneyed teen movie drama of innocent Janie going to a party that's gotten out of control and being told, if you don't smoke this joint, you're not cool, when she hesitates. Look, I'm not going to say that doesn't ever happen, but it's close. Rather, it's the norms that surround us that have a stronger pull. The behaviors we typically see from our caregivers and other adults we interact with on a regular basis as children shape our ideas of what adults are typically like and what, as an adult, we should be like. And what we see as common behavior among our peers likewise shapes our idea about what's normal for them and for us. There's an inertia that develops around these practices that's difficult to combat because it's always there, pulling at us. It's important to think about what you believe and why you believe it. What matters to you most? And what you're willing to let go of for the right price. Pay attention to the behaviors and the patterns around you. What do you want to reinforce or even increase? What can you do to make that happen? Which should be reduced? And what can you do about those? Most significantly, when you want to make a change, ask people to join you. Instead of fighting that inertia, get it to work in your favor. Maybe if more of the townspeople had not even called Gaston out on his boorish behavior, just side-eyed him and stepped away, things might have been different. Had his behavior been widely unacceptable, he might have chosen to behave differently. When we work together, we can create stronger support for the values we want to see in our community. The more something is seen, the more normal it seems. And that's what makes a lasting difference. Thanks for watching, everybody. See you next time.